Hey guys, Dino here, and welcome back to Portal 2 playthrough part 4. So it's been a while since I've tackled Portal 2. Got a little sidetracked with playing zombies, and obviously I've been putting out a few small Witcher videos. Like I said, the Witcher 2's PC requirements are a bit too steep for my computer, and I have a pretty, I don't know, I'd call it a mid-range, pretty middle of the mid-range pack computer. Runs just about everything, I think, at high graphics. You know, as you saw, I had no problems running Dead Space 2 at ultra high or whatever it was settings. I would imagine it might have some difficulty with Battlefield 3. I'm expecting to get a new machine before then, so we'll see what happens. But I run The Witcher 2 on the lowest settings possible, and I still have some choppiness. When I turn fraps on with that, I take a huge hit, and it's just, it's not fun to play like that. So that's why I'm not doing as much as far as the playthroughs on The Witcher. A few of you guys have brought up a lot of different questions about PCs versus consoles, a lot of different reasons. You know, what's the difference? You know, what's the deal with playing the games on which, and should you buy a new computer, or, you know, does this game require a new computer? And I mean, those are like the most complicated questions to answer, bar none. I think, well, just like everybody else, I started off as a console gamer, right? That's pretty much where everything started, you know. Depending on how old you are and how far back you go, I mean, it started, you know, at Atari. I think there was even something before that. And then Nintendo and, you know, Super Nintendo, Sega, 64, TurboGrafx 16, all sorts of crazy machines. So everybody started off on console. And then basically it was the internet really started to popularize PC games, and consoles didn't have that ability. It was still, you know, playing with your 2 or 3 buddies down the street or something like that. So PC games took off with the advent of basically the interwebs, and when the newer next-gen consoles came around and started giving the ability to play online, consoles just blew the fuck up again. And now, I mean, it's no question the player bases are much larger on consoles for the same games. It's actually really frustrating. I've mentioned before, you know, say COD is one of the most popular games regardless, right? So unfortunately, you know, all those player bases are segregated. PS3, PC, and Xbox, none of us are playing together. It's really frustrating. It's kind of silly. Anyway, and then you run into PCs. Basically just have a lot of logistical problems, and I think will stop them from ever being as user friendly as a console will. I think consoles are rapidly, well, it's even, you know, a console uses the same parts as a PC does, right? It's just that what makes a console so stable is that they're all using the exact same hardware. There's no different brands, no different manufacturers, no different specs, no different years, dimensions. It's all the exact same. All your games run flawlessly on them. It's huge. Whereas PCs, everybody's PC is running them a little bit differently, and so people get a whole variety of errors, and a lot of them are really hard to take account for, because there's just so many variations on the same hardware that people are playing with, which you don't see on consoles, and you don't see on Macs either. It's the same deal. Definitely not a Mac fan, by the way, but that is why they tend to be, you know, all in all, more stable. They all use the exact same hardware. It's the same idea behind consoles. Anyway, so where was I going with that? PCs have a lot of logistical problems. Basically, man, so even I'm trying to think where to even start with this. So you have a game like The Witcher, right? You look at the game like The Witcher, it doesn't look nearly as pretty as, say, Dead Space 2 does. But why why do I have to run The Witcher on the lowest possible graphics, and why can I run Dead Space 2 on the highest possible settings and have 0 frame rate issues? And then it starts to get complicated, and you talk about build engines, like the graphic engines that they run on not necessarily being optimized. You know, it's a lot of stuff that pretty much goes over my head, and I don't know too much about it other than some engines, from what I understand, are sloppier than others, and they just don't run as well, even though the graphics may not look as good as something else that runs better with higher settings. It seems like a really bizarre, strange problem. When we moved on from Battlefield 1942 to Battlefield Vietnam, the graphics in Vietnam, man, were almost arguably less stunning than those in 1942, but almost every single one of us were running that game on the lowest possible settings because nobody's computers could handle it. It was just a poorly optimized engine. One of the great perks to playing a game by Valve, like Portal 2, it's using the same engine that's been out for, what, 10 years? And it's well optimized, but its requirements are super, super low, which is awesome. It means that anybody can run it. You're going to have far fewer problems because it's a less demanding platform. It's a really good idea. To go off on a bit of a tangent too about game costs, one of the reasons why games cost so much, especially like the COD series, is that you are paying a good chunk of your money when you pay $60 for that game, which by the way is now charged for PCs as well. You are paying a good chunk of that money is basically going to pay for that new graphic engine that they had to spend millions of dollars creating. It's not going to gameplay, it's not going to testing, it's not going to game balancing, it's just going to the graphics engine. One of the ways game developers can create high quality products that anybody can play for much cheaper is to work with a game engine that's several years old. I think it's a fantastic idea, and I think it's one, it'll be interesting to see what happens with new consoles, because I think that might start becoming a bit more popular as a result of the last wave of consoles pushing so hard for graphics. And same thing with computers. I mean, people have, well, they both vocalized that they don't want, you know, computers are losing out because people want to spend the money every couple of years. The impression is that you have to spend thousands of dollars every 2 years to upgrade. I don't think that's necessarily the reality, but at the same time, I mean, this machine I'm playing on is, I think it's about 4 years old, and it's, you know, starting to have issues. And consoles are like, what, 8, something like that? I mean, a little bit more? I'm not sure, somewhere around there. So you definitely get more bang for your buck with a console, but the most recent consoles were incredibly expensive. You could easily build a new computer for what it costs to buy a new PS3 or an Xbox with the upgraded components. Basically, the Xbox tried to bill itself as the cheaper of the two consoles, but it just didn't include all the features that the PS3 did. So if you were to actually go and buy, you know, the Xbox, and then you were to buy like the wireless stuff and oh gosh, what else is it? The upgraded hard drive space, you would come out to pretty much the same price. I think it's within $50 of the PS3. Either way, those are insanely expensive. You know, $500 to $600 for a new console, and when you're paying $60 for a game, like that's definitely not cheap. So, anyway, I think the wave of the future is most likely, I think it's basically going for consoles. I don't see what they have. The only thing I see consoles not having at this point in time is basically the mouse and the keyboard. If consoles were able to pick up mouse and keyboard support tomorrow, there would be zero reason to ever play on a PC ever again. I don't know what the point would be, and this comes from someone who, you know, has played competitive gaming on PC for years and largely ignored consoles for a long time. You know, it's, I don't know what would be the reason. You know, I recently reactivated my Xbox Live account, and it was surprising to see all the features they have in there. Hulu and Netflix, and you know, I think they have basic browser settings, email. It's crazy. Like I mean, they're essentially turning into computers. They're just computers that are designed around playing games, which, whatever, fantastic, awesome, I love it. Just make it easier for me to play games, because essentially that's all I really want to do with my computer anyway. We've, you know, surpassed the need to build computers around typing Microsoft Word documents a long time ago, so kind of seems like that's where we should be going with them. The editing world too, as you guys have seen, I've had some difficulties with that. Man, computers are just so, like I said, there's so many different variables there that depending on the versions of software and all your hardware that you're using, you can run into a lot of different problems depending on how you record and edit your video games. And once again, like, you have to give props to the consoles. The easiest and most efficient manner of both recording and editing your video games is using an HD PVR with a console and a TV. It is so much easier than anything you do. You don't take a performance hit. Anything you do on a PC, that is. You don't take a performance hit. It works perfectly every time. Your codecs are always recognized. There's no performance issues when playing. It's a win-win situation. I'm surprised it's not more popular than it is. The only reason why it's not is it requires you probably to hook it up to at least a mid-range PC. If the HD PVRs were able to actually do everything all in one box, I'd definitely pay more for that, just so I didn't have to hook it up to a PC, but something like that doesn't exist yet. So my point is with the talk we've seen revolving around the game consoles, the developers both from Microsoft and especially PlayStation have said that the new consoles are not going to be coming out as quickly as have the previous generations because of costs and the graphics associated with the most recent versions. Like I said, somewhere around 8 years ago, something like that. Basically, they just pushed way too hard, and to make a comparable push would require you and I going out there and buying a console basically for, Jesus H, somewhere around, I don't know, probably closer to $800,000, and that's just far, far, far too expensive for most people to afford. Just not worth it. So we'll probably be having these stick around for a few more years. You know, PC graphics will start to eclipse that. I mean, they have already, which is another problem that we're actually running into, right? So developers see that consoles have a huge market, and you can't ignore that market. You would be, you know, moron to release a game, I think, only on PC. PC at this point has the smallest market share out of everything. So why you would ignore that is beyond me. I mean, your goal is to both make games and make money. I mean, it doesn't do you any good if you make a great game and put yourself out of business. So anyway, so what's happening is, as a result of the console's stagnated graphics or dated drivers, well, whatever, hardware, PCs are losing out because people aren't developing games solely for PCs and maximizing graphics because it doesn't do them any good. Also, games are first and foremostly being developed for consoles, and then they're being ported over to PCs, so they're being developed with consoles in mind first, and then they're ported over to PCs. And this often makes a lot of bizarre glitches and bugs for PCs, in addition to often not having the content optimized for a mouse and keyboard. So like, say some of the more common, it's not a bug, but some of the more common problems, being unable to basically remap your keys. Say Batman Arkham Asylum, right? That game, loved it, put a lot of videos of it up, but because it was a console first and PC port, you couldn't remap your keys. Why? I don't know. That's just the way it usually goes. Oftentimes too, like the menus and things like that, they they still force you to scroll around like using your arrow keys and weird shit like that, and the mouse just behaves goofy. It's really slow or sluggish. It just feels really awkward. So we'll see what ends up happening with that. But like I said, it just PCs have a lot of marks against them in my mind right now, and consoles have too much going for them. And I think PCs are definitely the ones losing out because games are being optimized for consoles and being ported over. So what I would like to see is more companies, like I said, starting to use older engines and emphasize the gameplay, and I'm kind of hoping that begins to happen as a result of consoles sticking around for a few years longer than most people thought they originally would. That would be awesome. You know, I have two reasons for wanting to put videos out here, and that's, well, essentially, number one, I've always wanted to, you know, show other people, I guess, what I'm capable of, and that's really exciting to feel like, not just share it with the rest of like the player base and the Battlefield community or something like that. And even then, you know, they never saw my screen; they just saw what happened when we played against each other. So I think it's going to be a blast doing that and proving it to myself and you guys that I think I am one of the best. But the other reason, and almost arguably even the larger reason, is like I said, talk about what makes games great and what makes a good game good and what makes a bad game bad, and how are we able to once we know that, basically, hopefully have a more educated gamer base, and then you guys start demanding more. I think that would be ideal, because ultimately it's us as the gamers who are missing out. You know, and when we're buying up the same Call of Duty game year after year after year that essentially hasn't been changed, and we're paying for that new graphics engine as opposed to new gameplay. It's up to us to change that. That brings me to something else. I really want to encourage everybody to, you know, talk about what they think, you know, whether you agree or disagree with myself or anybody else. That being said, it seems like a popular sort of mindset that you, I don't know, by disagreeing or something like that, you're a complainer, or I don't know. I'm not really sure where that comes from. I guess that is one way to look at it, but the other way to look at it is like, well, I don't know, if no one ever says anything, then, well, how is anybody to know to change something, you know what I mean? It's just, nothing's going to change by itself magically, so, it's been an interesting experience posting that Witcher review and seeing some of the comments on there, people talking about all sorts of different things, and then talking with Bruce, too, and it can be very frustrating to get comments that, you know, are oblivious to the fact that you've addressed something before, whether it's in the comments or the video, and I understand that. You know, not everyone's going to read every comment or watch every second of it, so a certain measure of that's expected. But, you know, just simply saying, you know, this guy's opinion sucks, he's a moron, like, that doesn't do anything for anyone. And like I said, I think we're almost hurting ourselves by not sort of having those talks with each other and figuring out, like, what's the best way to improve this game, because, you know, if I was a developer, I would be watching this stuff, and I know, I talked before, like, I have my entire Steam list, I mean, consists of more or less developers, and, you know, they want to hear this stuff. Their goal is to improve their games. You know, if tomorrow, you know, every single guy on YouTube banded together and agreed upon, you know, what the changes were they wanted to make in the COD series, I guarantee with like 4 million people saying, hey, this part sucks, this part's great, they would listen to that. Chances are obviously really tiny, but I'm just saying, like, changes are going to happen just because we want it to without saying anything. That being said, I've been doing a lot more zombies lately. It's a lot of fun. Still having huge issues with my connection. Cannot wait to move and pick up something halfway decent. The internet here at school is not so hot. So hopefully in the next 2 weeks that should be happening. My PVR is on its way, which means we start expecting a lot of console stuff too. And we been talking to Bruce about doing the dual screens, both console and zombies, and then PC doing some Borderlands stuff as well. So I think there should be a lot of fun stuff coming down the pipeline. In addition to that, I'm going to finish up this Portal 2 playthrough and keep those miscellaneous Witcher videos coming. So stay tuned for more great stuff.
Telling you would spoil the surprise. So I'll just give you a hint. It involves meeting two people you haven't seen in a long time.